Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. I'm in a bit of a different spot today just because it's nighttime and the lighting in the other room is terrible. So here I am, and I'm going to talk about Moon Hunters by Anya Pavelle today. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. It's pretty. It's a really pretty name, so I hate to do it injustice, but that's all I got. So Moon Hunters is a sort of dystopian sci-fi story. Um, that takes place sometime in the future after a great plague has affected the world and has killed off a lot of people. And sort of to escape this plague, a group of people led by a certain person, like one man, went to this island and established a society there and cut themselves off from the rest of the world. And since then, in the, I don't know, a few generations since then, they've evolved into their own functioning society that knew the outside world existed but had no contact with it, and really didn't care about what was going on out there. They were content to be their own little pocket of humanity. And some interesting things about it were that there's three different villages that were kind of founded by three different people and had different sort of philosophies for how they wanted to rule their particular village. One of whom was very authoritarian, oppressive. That pretty much sums up that one. The others were more like had more freedom, a little more liberal in that regard, personal freedoms. But everybody had to contribute toward a central like food supply and distribution so that everybody would get fed equally, and that everyone had to work. A bit of a like maybe like a socialistic sort of society that was small enough to work well enough. They somehow worked it out so that everybody felt equal enough and felt like they had enough resources that they didn't have to attack another village in order to get more supplies or get more power. They all found a balance. And the story enters in on this woman named Leilani, who is sort of a princess of her village. She is a descendant of the person who originally founded it, a person who calls himself Lehom, and that is the name of the village too. And it kind of pays an homage to the French word Lehom, which is man. So Leilani starts out this story, and it's pretty clear from the beginning that it kind of takes after maybe The Handmaid's Tale, in that women in this village are very restricted from a lot of things due to the backwards or misogynistic beliefs of the village founder, Lahom. And we kind of learn about a history of why it was that way. Basically, it I don't know. To be honest, the men are also pretty oppressed in this society, which sucks. It kind of sucks all around for everybody. Like everybody suffers in some way due to the structures that the founder put in place, women and men alike. Leilani learns that she's been selected to become elegance, which is one of the virtues, like a handmaiden sort of person for the queen of the village. And that means she has to interact with the king, who's a very gross character. He's not very pleasant at all. Everything about him is very off-putting, gross, mean, misogynistic, of course. And so the book kind of follows her path toward maybe enlightenment might be a word, or like her own self-discovery of her own worth and the freedom that she could enjoy if she were to be able to break the chains of her own figurative enslavement and then her literal sort of enslavement. Might be, I don't know if that's the right word, but she's definitely breaking maybe the chains of her oppression and then breaking figuratively and literally, sort of. So getting into how I looked at this story, just as a reminder, I kind of go off of a 5-star system. I look at general, like overarching structures of the book, such as plot, characters, world building, and the writing itself, the prose, and then I average it all together, and that gives my final score. So going into plot, I gave that a 3 out of 5. Like it's above average. It's like all right, but it could have been better, I think. Mostly due to the fact that throughout the story, I never felt like the stakes were really high. Terrible, like bad things happen to Leilani, but they're so removed from her actions. Like some of them are not. Like some of them are consequences of her choices, but they're, I don't know. It just doesn't quite connect, I don't think. Part of it is that she has a lot of people on her side, and they all help her escape this oppressive society, and it all just kind of falls together for her. I'm not sure how much. I mean, she had to do her own part, and she had to find strength within herself. So that's why I don't give it like a 2 out of 5. But there's still like a lot of times where I was just like, I just don't really feel the pressure of the plot happening, just because I know that there's some, like, a lot of people are rooting for her, a lot of people are helping her get what she needs, and I feel like if there was less of that, then maybe it would have been more in, I don't want to say engaging, because I was engaged during the story, but maybe more enthralling, maybe. So overall, I give it a 3 out of 5, just because there were points where I just didn't feel like a lot of things were at stake, or that I didn't feel there was any true danger to Leilani. There's a little bit of an issue I have with a certain character, and that kind of affects the plot, where I wish this character had been introduced earlier, and that he was woven into the story more deeply instead of kind of being introduced, I don't know, maybe a quarter of the way through or something like that. And then they just automatically feel a certain way toward another, and it goes from there. It would have been nicer to have that be like more slow, or more well-paced, more realistic. So all those, overall the plot was logical, everything made sense, the pacing was fine, like nothing dragged on too long, and the like big beats of the story happened at a reasonable rate. So overall 3.5 for plot, or excuse me, 3 out of 5 for plot. Characters is another area where I thought it was a little weaker, like another 3 out of 5, mostly because of one character in particular. Leilani, the main character, is fairly well fleshed out. You get to see inside her head a lot. You get to see the reason for her choices, for her actions, for her beliefs. You get to know her values very strongly, and she somehow already has a feeling that this way of life is not right. That she feels like she knows that this is oppression, and that she's being treated unfairly, even though this is what she's grown up her whole entire life. So again, I wondered a bit throughout the story of like, how does she know that she's living a life that, well, I guess actually the reason that she might know is because she's a scribe at the library in like the central area of the island. So she's exposed to a lot of ideas that didn't originate in her village. So that provides a good reason, but still sometimes it felt like she just kind of knew that it was wrong, whereas it might have been more, it might have been a really good opportunity for her to learn that the reason that the village was the way it was is because the leader had a lot of like backwards views, or like he suffered something extremely bad at the hands of one of his ex-wives. So that's why he placed such stringent rules, and wanted all women to kind of be subdued in that way, so that couldn't repeat itself, so to speak, even though it corrupted, the society to an extent. So overall, it seems like Leilani was an enjoyable character. I enjoy getting to know her. She had some other characters around her that I liked as well, like her grandmother. There's a friend she has named Dermisu, who has an interesting plot line. A couple others that she meets down the road, who provide a little different perspective of her village, yet are still in solidarity with her. Like they want to have a better life as well. I guess getting around to kind of moving past Leilani, she meets a character that is named Janae, and it starts in her childhood, and she kind of remembers it. Remembers the first time meeting him, and it seems to be the only time she's ever met him. Which to me, I was like, okay, she met him once, and it's like one of those things where it stayed with her that her whole life, which is it could happen. And she remembered his eyes, the color of his eyes, and then later on, she meets him again and recognizes him because of his eyes, and pretty much falls in love with him right off the bat. And he also falls in love with her right off the bat. Like he had apparently loved her this whole entire time, ever since meeting her, and inspired her to become what he was in the village and everything. Which, sure, okay. I prefer romances that happen a little more organically or slowly, or they get to know each other, or somehow, like, if it'd been the case where she meets him in that other village, but then over time, kind of like runs into him now and again, and always has an interesting experience with him, that would have been really interesting, I think. And she'd have to kind of hide the way she feels over the course of her life, because of the structure of her village and her place in it. Like she's a princess, so she's gonna probably be married to somebody that is like a more political marriage instead of out of love. Another reason I just didn't really like Janae as a character was because he really was just kind of an accessory. Didn't really have any flaws. He was just like a kind, patient person willing to do anything for Leilani automatically. And I didn't really see any other side of him. He's pretty one-dimensional in that regard. He was just kind of there as a person to be with Leilani, and it was perfect, and their love was so perfect. And again, it was like fine, and it wasn't so unbearable that I couldn't read it, but I still was like, I wish that it would have gone deeper, is what I would say about it. Some other memorable characters would be the king and the queen. They both are definitely very flawed people. The author does a fantastic job of using some sensory techniques to associate with the king and make it just feel unpleasant. Like in particular, she uses beef oil. Like he has a smell of beef oil about him, and for some reason I like beef and everything, but it just made my stomach turn thinking about it. So great job, author. That was really effective. So they were pretty memorable. I think that Janae is really the reason I give it a 3 out of 5. I think overall some characters could have used some more depth, but Janae especially, and I wish that we could have got to know him better in that regard. So moving on to world building, this is really where the book shines, I think. It was so well fleshed out and so rich in detail, like everything from the clothes, the food, the housing, the way of life for these people was all thought out by this author, and she does a great job weaving it into the story naturally and not just doing a bunch of, like, there was maybe an occasional info dump where she kind of just like splatted everything that was relevant at that time on the page, but overall it came in as it needed. Like she would be cooking a meal and describing how the meal, like what kind of food was used, like how the food got there. It was all really interesting. I really enjoyed reading that, and I think she clearly did like a lot of research, maybe into like maybe cult societies or how village life could work on an island. It was all very creative and pretty unique, I thought, and so I really enjoyed that aspect. And I think if you are a person who enjoys world building or that kind of area of the world, like a tropical island. Like if you like Moana, you might like this book just because of just the richness of the world she created. And then lastly is the prose. So I gave that a 5 out of 5 just because there was nothing I was lacking in regards to what I wanted to know more about. I loved learning about this world. The writing, the prose, I gave a 4.5 out of 5. It was really high just because this author, Anya Pavelle, has a very strong command of prose and description. Her descriptions were very beautiful. Her descriptions of the island and its natural beauty were so poetic. That's really where I think it was strongest. And just the overall, the writing in general, like, is very polished. I can envision the scene very, very clearly, and I really enjoyed envisioning the scene because of how, like, lovingly she crafted it. So all of those were really good. The world building and the prose were excellent. That's why I gave it such high scores. So overall, the book averages to a 4 out of 5. And it was an enjoyable book. I think if you like books that are kind of like dystopian with a female lead, and it might have a bit of a focus on like oppression of women and liberating themselves from that, then I think you'll like this book. Sometimes, like if you're a person who doesn't really care about political sort of things, it may come off a little heavy-handed, but overall it was like natural enough within the story that there was no overtones of this like somehow applying to our current day society. I didn't get preached at about how women are oppressed in 2020 in current years. So I thought it was really good, and I would recommend to anybody who likes that sort of story. So that's my review of Moon Hunters by Anya Pavelle. You can check it out on Amazon. It's available for, I think, like $5. It's a good read if you enjoy dystopian stories. And also stories about overcoming and having some romance woven within it. So go ahead and check it out. I hope you have a great day, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.